Hey, Michael Besson here, Christian.com. We are ready. Oh my goodness, you're in for a treat today. This is our LifeCast of Dr. Bob and Audrey Meisner. What an extraordinary journey to wholeness they have had in their marriages. These guys go on stages all around the world, touching lives and live events. They have a best-selling book about their very, very unique marriage. And oh my goodness, what a privilege to be able to spend an hour and 30 minutes with these guys. We went deep on a whole lot of subjects. And listen, you want to take your marriage, your relationships, maybe you're not even married yet, you want to take that all to the next level, come and join us because this is the place. Hey there, welcome. This is Michael Besson from Christian.com. Your best life starts here. And today is it's exciting. It is the number 2 session that we are doing. And when we get to the thousands, that'll be so cool. But I have 2 amazing people on today that I love, admire, respect, and their passion for touching people around the world is unparalleled. And especially in the arena of marriage and relationships. So without further ado, Bob Meisner and his beautiful wife, Audrey, welcome to LifeCast.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you,
Very
Michael.
honored to be here and very excited for your new endeavor.
Yeah, thank you for allowing us to be a part of, the launching of what an exciting, I think, adventure that is yet ahead for you and for all of those that participate with this network. It's going to be good.
Yeah, it's really, truly exciting. And this, the thing I love about the podcast medium, and you guys are media experts, and far be it from me to give you guys some thoughts on this, but I see this
Please
evolution.
do. Please do.
We're always learning.
We're always learning.
That is the 2 words you need to know. Always learning.
Yeah.
That's what you need to know.
I think it's an evolution in media because what I see here is kind of an expression like art where there's a blank canvas and things just come out that aren't going to happen in the 22-minute slot in church. It's not going to happen, generally speaking, from a seminar platform. And there's just this natural fluidity to this that causes conversation points and things to happen that wouldn't otherwise happen. And we don't care if it's out of the box. We want it out of the box,
Yeah.
I hesitate to say this because there's too many young people, but I don't want your father's Oldsmobile Christianity here. And most people don't even know what an Oldsmobile is anymore, let alone the ad, right? But the idea that I have and the idea behind all this is there are people living an extraordinary life, touching souls around the world. And it doesn't look, and by the way, I'm not here to beat up churches. I'm not here to beat up pastors. I'm not here to beat up Christianity. That's not the deal. I'm saying that there are people being incredibly effective that don't kind of look like what most people perceive Christians to be. And we want this to be a melting pot and to connect with those kinds of people. So I'm just so thrilled to have you guys on part of the first event.
I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll tell you what we'll do to help with your endeavor is that we will just not be boring. Okay, we'll just really.
Yes!
I actually kind of have my own little thing about don't like boring, so this is going to work. So
I love it.
You are now on a podcast, and podcast means you can ask anything. So you just ask us whatever you want, and we will not hold back.
Well, let's start with the foundation stuff. Like, where did you guys start? I mean, not even the ministry, but Bob, I don't know if you remember this, but one of the things we have in common is we're both Youpers. That's what we talked about when we were.
Yes, sure.
That's attractive.
There's only like 14 people.
You've done really well in kind of washing that out of your language. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jesus.
Hallelujah.
So being from Michigan, Audrey and I, being born and raised in Michigan, Audrey and I, we met in Dallas, Texas at Christ for the Nations.
Oh, that's right.
So that's kind of our foundation. And that was in the early 80s. And this year we're going to celebrate our 35th wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
And so in you opening the podcast today, you said that we had a real passion for relationships and marriage. And that's where we began. We just really...
we started with a passion for each other.
Yeah, definitely a passion for each other.
That's a great way to start.
And had no idea, that 5 years later that we would
Right.
be where we are now.
Exactly.
And what a journey it's been. So take us back, you guys, when you were young. I know, Audrey, you kind of came from Christian television royalty families and family in Canada. And I'm not positive where Bob came from, but now you both meet in seminary, basically, or in a Bible college.
Actually, it was in Christ for the Nations
Yeah.
in Dallas, Dallas, Texas.
And that is is that where you go for Bible school, like to become pastors and et cetera?
No, that's where you go to find a husband.
It's not Bible college, it's bridal college.
Actually, I went there to say, okay, I'm not going to go there for a man. I'm just so determined. My brother was going there, and Bob was my brother Jeff's roommate. And so we just naturally met and became really good friends. And it's love. One of the things that it wasn't necessarily love at first sight, right? Was it for you?
Intrigue at first sight.
Oh, he was intrigued by me.
Definitely.
And you guys how old were you then?
How old were we?
I was 17.
Yeah. We were 19 and 21 when we got married.
Right.
But I met her when she was 17.
Yeah.
And we were out having dinner together, pizza. And all of a sudden she told me she was 17 and we were going to be out past curfew. And I was
it was a no mercy zone at Bible school.
But what we loved most about each other and what was that we shared and was extremely attractive to each other is that we wanted to be world changers. We were at school, yes, to educate, but that we wanted our lives to matter. And I think that's, so true for the listeners that we have today. They're taking time, they're investing in their life, not just to gain information, but they want to experience a real God and then be able to take that life transforming power, to others. And I think that's what people really want, is that they've observed a type or a stereotype of Christianity. And it's like, boy, that's not just what I want. I want something that transcends, just this lifestyle. I need some real answers to some real life issues. And so for Audrey and myself, I think one of the things that we share that's so very, very real is that we could not and did not want to just fake our lives. We don't want to just do this Christian thing, just because, of the homes and the families we were raised in. But we wanted our life and our walk with God to be authentic and very real.
Okay, can I just get real here? Because we were totally love Jesus.
Absolutely, girl. You just let it go.
We were in love, but we were also in heat. And so we did want to get married.
I've never heard that before.
You can use it. Because I'm sure you felt the same thing.
I have many times. So let me ask you a question. Now you're madly in love.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Do you really want to go there? Yeah, you know what? It is an amazing thing, even my own journey. I may dabble it in here, but I really, it's funny. You guys are experts at interviewing people. And since the last time we talked, I think part of my journey, but I had 5 years of mercury poisoning that just blew up my life, my marriage, my home. Yeah. And then I was speaking in San Diego to a group of entrepreneurs and went into my hotel room, had a massive stroke. And I had to learn how to talk, text, do math from scratch. I was diagnosed as a preschooler, inability to speak and comprehend. And then 5 days later, they found out the reason of the stroke was cancer. And so I was in the hospital for 21 days with colon cancer. And this journey of walking this out is largely due to the fact that I knew you guys. And I had learned how to persuade my heart that God's promises were bigger and more powerful than the words that were being spoken to me by the physicians. So there's a huge part of my journey.
I'm so proud of you and so proud of your courage. And I'm so proud of Jesus in you. But it's not, we partner with him, don't we, in these things. So that's why I can be super proud of you as our brother, that you did your part in saying, you know what? I want it all. I want this healing. I want everything that Jesus has for me. So I am going to persuade my heart, and I'm going to make that decision.
Yeah,
that's mine. That's mine, and I'm so glad you did that.
And the journey and what has happened since then, just learn every single day of my life I meditate on my heart between 20 minutes and 3.5 hours. And again, in large measure to your ministry. So listen, it's hard for you guys to be the people that are being interviewed, because I could all of a sudden just turn this around because you guys are so good at it. But I want to make sure the audience knows your story.
Sure.
So you fall madly in love as this young couple.
Right.
You got a heart
Don't
for
have
Jesus,
kids.
and you got a heart for
That's
Jesus and ministry. How long before the time that you date do you actually walk down the altar? It sounds like 3 years-ish.
No. We got engaged a few months later after we met, probably after we started dating, and then we got married a year later.
A year later after the engagement.
So it was probably about a year and 4 months after we met that we were married, and we started having kids right away because we couldn't help ourselves. We were like,
just the curiosity.
It was
what will these
literally
children
curious.
look like?
And then we just said,
I always wanted kids.
So that was our decision-making process. We were like, I wonder what our kids would look like. Yeah, I wonder. Do you want to have some? Sure. No one can stop us.
That's beautiful. Now you're having kids, and are you out of the ministry in Canada then, or what are you guys doing day to day in ministry?
So we're involved with Daily Christian Television, and it's a national program that her father and mother pioneered in 1976.
Wow.
And so I moved into the producing and the directing of the program. And then with our young children, we then became involved with a national and even international children's program called Sunshiny Day.
Yeah.
And so we're running into some copyright issues with regards to the music. Yeah. And so Audrey, being a musician, she began to write original children's music that turned into 5 recordings and about 90 episodes. It went international, translated into the Russian language, and broadcast in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Russia. And so that was fun, all over the United States. So that's a part, of our lives that a lot of people really don't know about. I used to do puppets.
Yeah.
And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, we used to do.
I talked to puppets a lot.
We would do.
And very naturally, I would just get completely into them. Like
we would do children's crusades. And we did a lot of that for many, many years.
Yeah, that is the part that I loved children, like talking to kids about Jesus on TV, because it was like, I want to tell you that because when I was a little kid, Jesus was my best friend.
Yeah.
And I want that every single person to know that they don't ever have to be alone.
Yeah, we would conclude every single program with the same song.
Yeah.
And we were approached by networks that asked us if you would tone down the Jesus, we could really take this program and make it big. And the thing is that we didn't want to compete with the children's programming that was out there.
Right.
Really good stuff. I mean, Sesame Street is awesome.
Yeah.
And so why duplicate what they're so successful at? And what we wanted to do was, at a young age, introduce people that they could really be best friends with Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And so I just wanted to, as you move that thing along, that was really the story of our life, is that we are full of adventure. We were never, as you can tell, we weren't scared to take on anything whatever our way. And we were risk takers. We packed up the kids and moved to Hawaii, went to YWAM for a year when we were like late 20s.
I was 30 years old.
Yeah. And so everything of our life was an adventure. And so now fast forwarding into our mid 30s.
Well, and again, we love adventure.
Right.
And
we can talk
when it comes to, being safe isn't high on our priority list. So sometimes we need that voice of reasoning to kind of reel us back in.
Yeah. That's another thing we have in common, is not only the UP, but I also lived in Hawaii for a while. So I'm very familiar with that, and I know people at YWAM as well. And so now you're in Hawaii, you're in your mid-30s, your kids are, I'm thinking, 8 to 12-ish or something. Is that about right?
Yeah, we got back from Hawaii, kept doing shows, and then our kids were, well, let's say we started a church in Canada, and that became probably, I will say, it felt like my first really big failure, because not that the church wasn't amazing, that the people that came there, but I had, as a person who loves to succeed and be an achiever. I really, when we dreamed this thing up and we sacrificed for this church, I did dream up something where it would impact a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And people weren't coming to church, and I was loving the people that were there, and we were loving our time. But after months and years
we were
of that,
at this place of comparison and measurement.
yeah.
Oh, man, haven't we all been there sometime?
And it
Right.
literally like strangles the life out of you, and it challenges your pure motives. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and you take a look at the matrix of the local church, and so often it is measured by comparison and by numbers.
Yep.
And so it
beats you up.
If last week was good, then the next week and the next week and the next week. And then
it just turns into a super try hard life. It's like, oh, we got to do something better. We got to try harder. We got to be more sacrificial. We got to
be
love.
more amazing than we were the week before.
And we were doing this church on the side from our full-time jobs. So it was just taking out every bit of our energy and our strength. But most of all, I was dealing with a failure that was probably the hardest for me. And so I got exhausted. But the other thing about starting a church is you can't just decide one week that you don't want to do that anymore.
Amen.
As soon as, the 1 week, the one service is over, you're preparing, for the next service.
That's
right.
right.
And the next service.
And then not only just month to month, but then it turns into year by year. And I started to feel this feeling of I feel like a failure and I feel trapped within my failure. And I feel exhausted. Yeah. And I don't have a capacity at this point in my life relationally to put those negative feelings into words and express them to Bob. Yeah. Because I'm a pleaser and I want to make him happy, and I'm not allowed to feel anything but loving and nice. And so all of that was trapped inside of me.
So the first book that we authored is entitled Marriage Undercover. But the subtitle to it is Thriving in a Culture of Quiet Desperation. And I think many believers and followers of Jesus are quietly desperate on the inside, but they're combating and battling with this sense of failure, a sense of worthlessness, a sense of striving and struggling. And it comes to a place of barrenness. And so, there was a place, earlier on where Audrey was in a service where the Lord spoke directly to her heart.
Oh, I'll never forget it. And this guy was speaking and didn't know him, but he just stopped preaching, closed his Bible, and started pointing and said, listen, everyone, beware of the barrenness of busyness. And it kind of hit me because I've always been a busy person because I always want to do the next thing.
Because busyness, we hope, if we can just create a little more activity, if we just do a little more work,
try a little harder,
maybe that will solve the emptiness or the barrenness that I'm feeling in my heart.
Or maybe it'll make me feel approved and accepted and enough that maybe am I a big deal? Am I important? Am I significant in this world? Am I doing enough for Jesus? But even as a person, is this it?
Is this enough?
And I think that's this, I'm talking about 18, 20 years ago when we're talking about, but I think that whole concept of measurement is on steroids now because that is just multiplied exponentially with everything with the internet.
One of the biggest breakthroughs of my life is that I compare myself to who I was yesterday and no one else. And that breakthrough gave me this trajectory with God. I only want to be a better man than I was yesterday. I don't need to be a better man than Bob or anybody else in my life. And the freedom that comes from that. And then the secondary thing for me is that I see a lot of churches stuck in behavior modification and, 5 steps to a better marriage. Nothing wrong with some of those tactics, by the way. I don't mean to be negative on them. But if it doesn't change at a heart level, if our significance, which by the way is one of 6 human needs in my book, if our significance doesn't come from who we are in Christ, then it's all empty, right? It's just completely empty. At least that's been my journey. Does that resonate with you guys?
Yeah, and we feel the pressure of our society and our culture to really to be that big deal.
Yeah.
And I was feeling like a failure, feeling like, wow, I can't do this anymore. And I felt trapped. And Bob mentioned quiet desperation. I will say that desperate people do shocking things. So now, this is me now. I've been a Jesus girl all my life. My mom and dad have been in ministry all my life. And this is real for me. It's not a pretend thing. I love God
That's
a
right.
lot. And so when a young guy started coming to our church and started, saying, "Oh, you work so hard. Oh, you're so beautiful," just all these things that were wanting to reach my heart, I just went, "Oh my gosh, we got to get you a girlfriend." But then that desperation part of me opened her eyes and said, "What? You notice how hard I work? You think I'm amazing?" You see, and I started gravitating towards that and thought, "Oh, I'm so glad I can have a friendship with this guy." And I was so glad that I had this under control, because I would never do that. And those are the three words that I ask everyone to really think about never saying. And that is, I would never do that. Because that's actually revealing a heart of pride, that I don't need God here. I can keep this under control, because that's just nothing I would ever do. But, sin takes, I thought I made a small compromise. We can just have this friendship and go for lunch, because I would never do that. And I found out as well, there's no such thing as a small compromise.
Boy, amen to that.
Sin will take you further than you ever dreamed you could go. I don't need to talk any more about this, but I will say that age 36, our kids are now 10, 12, and 15 years old, and I had a sexual affair, and never dreamed that would be me ever saying those words out of my mouth. I didn't even know I was capable of that. And then the affair lasts 3 weeks. I'm just completely in inner turmoil. Whenever we are attracted towards sin, or attracted to something in that illicit relationship, or whatever that is, or the addiction, it's because we believe we can get something from that, or get something that we can get apart from God.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And I was caught up in that lie. But as soon as I was in the lie, having the affair, I was now in turmoil. I was like, no, this is terrible. I'm in complete breakdown mode here. So I broke it up with him. And then my next plan was never to tell a single soul. Nobody found out. I got out of it before it was too late. And now I'm just going to ask Jesus to forgive me, and we can move on. But I will say that when I talk to Jesus, because he loves me so much, and it's always out of his love for us, whenever he speaks to our hearts, it's because he loves us. Because he loves me so much, he says, "You need to tell Bob about." I was like, "Oh my, I can't. I could never." But you see, God knew that the enemy loves secrets. And that secret had the power to divide a wedge into the intimacy that we shared, and eventually destroy that connection that Bob and I had. And I thought I could just keep it a secret, but God knew better. And it was
we're only as broken as the secrets we keep. It's just amazing. So now what? There's a moment in the den, I think it was. I can't remember where it was, but you approached Bob.
2 days later, we're actually just at the office, and I fell at his feet and told him that was the day.
Yeah, and again, when you move away from the crisis, you can begin to look back and see the red flags and the warning signs and the conversations that you would have had. You're always trying, what could we have done to have avoided this crisis and this devastation? But in the midst of it, the anger and the imagery that comes along with it, the depth of betrayal is so big and so very, very real.
Bob, I just want to interrupt you for a moment, because there are millions of men and women who experience this betrayal. And at the moment it's brought to your attention by whatever mechanisms, the wife, that's unusual. It is, and it's happened to me, so I've lived through it. It is devastating to am I enough? Why wasn't I enough? How come I didn't see this? What could I, all of a sudden, at least it was a trigger to my emotional wounds that I had been carrying forever. And I'm just curious, Bob, what was it like the first few minutes? I mean, what was racing through your mind, your heart, your soul?
The first one, I guess, would be disbelief. That would be the first one. She's confessing to an affair, but maybe it's not as bad as you would think that it is. So disbelief would be the first. Then you move into a place of not just asking questions, but you begin to interrogate. And then you begin to really probe and dig deep. Then I think what happens to most individuals is that you move into a place of self-preservation, because you feel as though that you've been attacked. You feel as though that you're the victim, that you're undeserving in this. And so you're wanting to preserve as much of a sense of I am okay, that it's not my fault. And immediately you want to begin to attach the blame. Who's really at fault here?
That's right, yeah.
It's not me. And so it's you, it's this other person, what other things? But immediately, through all the questions of why would you do this? Why did you do that? Why didn't you tell me? If you would have told me sooner, we could have avoided this. Why? And all of those, whenever you're asking that why question, you are taking a superior position of judgment, and you're standing and you're saying, I need you to tell me why you did this. You're passing judgment. And so those kinds of things are really happening in moments. They're just happening in nanoseconds. And then the next thought was self-preservation, which is really what our mind goes to, and where my ego is thrives is in the intellect of my mind. And so I'm thinking, if I just isolate and remove myself from this situation, she will then be discovered for what she did to me, because I'm innocent.
Right.
And so ego is always out there wanting to protect or project an image of the perception that you have of yourself.
Right.
And the perception that I had of me was innocence. I'm innocent. You're the guilty one. And so when you do that, then when you're protecting yourself, the only way that you can do that is to expose and to shame the other person, because out of their guilt, then it projects yourself as being innocent.
Yeah, I didn't do this. It wasn't my fault.
Right. So when you hear that, I want you to hear the arrogance and the pride of my life.
And and the character, and I've known the story, and I couldn't wait for it to be unraveled here. And I've heard it from Focus on the Family, live in person with you two in the living room. I've heard it from the seminar stages. And every time I sit back and I'm in awe at the character of both of you, that God has delivered, healed, blessed, taken through the storm, and come out the other side as people who touch lives all over the world.
It's so interesting you brought that, because usually we just continue the story at this point, but I just felt like I want to interject for our listeners specifically today that we don't usually ever share. And that is the fear behind. I really feel like I want to talk about fear.
Let's go.
Because there's fear behind what we do. We're talking about some dysfunction that takes place, but now here we are 18 years later after this whole thing happened, and we're helping couples 24/7. We do relationships 24 hour, that's our full-time job.
That's
is
right.
relationship.
That's right.
And so we refuse to just say, hey, go on more dates or just love each other more. Well, that's not going to help anyone.
Yep.
Because that's not getting to the root of what's going on. But I look back today, Michael, and I see what was going on, and it was 100% fear. I'm going to tell you about, for me, my 100% fear was losing control. So I have fear of losing control. And fear of failure. Those are my two top core, we call them core fears, is that my fear of failure is that I'm not the best. I'm not living to my potential. I'm comparing myself. So I'm performing. I'm all doing this. And these are all the results of that. So going year after year of doing a church that looked like it was failing in my eyes, maybe not to other people, because you know what? Lives are being changed. People
That's
are being
right.
helped. So
That's right.
I don't want people to sit here, be from that church, go, it was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome. But in my limited way of defining success, it wasn't what I dreamed it to be, and I couldn't get out, and I couldn't do any better. So everything in me felt trapped. So that fear of failure drove me to extreme frustration, where I've got to power my way out of here, and nobody knows how hard this is for me.
And so where do you place your greatest expectations? You set yourself up for your greatest sense of disappointment.
Yeah.
And so we had huge expectations
Of this church.
on the church, on the success, what that would look like. But we also do that in our relationships, with each other. We place these high expectations on one another. And then when those expectations aren't met, what was, originally something that happens in relationships is that you're amazed by the other person. You're intrigued by the other person.
When we first fell in love, my gosh.
They could
I can't
do
believe
nothing
That's right.
wrong.
That's right. Every day. It's so amazing. It's so amazing.
So
it's
good.
amazing.
So good.
And what Bob did that used to be completely amazing when we first got married. What happens if you do amazing for 2 years straight?
It gets boring and it starts to bug you.
Well, it starts to be normal. Like
it becomes normal.
It's the exact same thing that used to be amazing. And
Right.
now you're just being
but
normal.
then it comes to a place of what's expected. Now no longer is it a pleasure. Now no longer is it something that you really enjoy. But now there's an expectation on it. It's not just normal.
Yeah.
But you're expecting that from the other person.
You know, I bet that's what was happening in the church, because everyone was pretty much like, wow, we're experiencing this. We're doing things like family, and this is amazing. It was amazing. And then it became very normal, and it became expected, and yet we were exhausted in it. And we could never get to the next level. And
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I have a rather unique journey with Christ, and I accepted Christ when I was 15 years old, and half the school got saved. I was obviously had a gift of communication back then and evangelism.
Well, let's just call it a gift of persuasion.
Yeah, and a gift gone, too far the wrong direction is a weakness, right? And so it's funny. I was coaching one of my children, or trying to raise them up good, and telling them that the gift of persuasion is beautiful as long as you're sharing truth.
Yeah.
It only becomes darkness when you share lies and you're persuading people like that. So I said, I had this amazing thing happening all over the Jesus movement. I'm a little older than you guys. And so we're talking like 1973, I think. And then I just walked away, and God plucked me out, put me in the Navy, and sent me away. And for a lot of years. And here's the thing I actually shared with one of our collective mentors, Jim Richards, the other day. I said, my asking Christ to be my Savior was so real, so powerful. It was a moment where the ceiling lit up. I walked out differently. I couldn't believe it. And still, I wandered back into the desert for a long, long time. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, millions of dollars, hanging out with the A-list in Hollywood and the A-list in music. And all of that time, there was this nagging thing inside where this is just not satisfying. And I would meet some of the people that I idolized as a child, and we'd be hanging out on the beaches of Maui, and I would go, is this it? Is this what the world has to offer at the very highest level? I'm on these private jets, and I'm hanging out with these guys, and I'm going, this is it? These guys are, when you get past the facade, they're miserable because they're at the top. And so a lot of times people have these broken lives because of horrible circumstances, financially or spiritually, emotionally, physically. Sometimes people are at the country club China level of life, and they're just going, I'm miserable too, because is this all there is, right? And so, I'm kind of getting to a point here that we do everything to avoid fear or to gain pleasure, and I think we will do greater things to avoid fear. But here's the thing that I've learned from you guys, is that when fear comes into my life now, I send it away in the name of Jesus. And I bathe in the truth of God's word. And there's a transformation. There's a thing going on in my heart nonstop. And nobody knows my battles. Nobody knows the DNA I got from birth, right? Nobody knows the stuff that I have to overcome.
That's
The foolishness of the decades that I wandered the desert and the damage that caused. It's going to take me some time. And so I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, wow, what a beautiful love story. Because I know from my life, God never left me. God never departed. Didn't matter what I was doing, man. God was right there, chasing me to heal me, to make me whole. And I think to a large measure, I'm seeing that missing in Christians' lives, because I see these cycles happening over and over and over, and the cast of characters changes. The wife's names change, the husband's names change, the business names change. But you go 10 years, 15, 20, it's the same things. And you guys are breaking the cycle through heart transformation. Am I missing something?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
exactly right.
And so when you hit a crisis moment in your life, it's almost as though the parallel realities of your life, they intersect with one another. And it's almost as though they collide, your secret life and the life that you've projected and the image that you wanted people to see. And it's as though they collide, and it creates this crisis moment. But within that crisis moment, it's accompanied with a whole lot of emotion that really wants to drive your life. And with that emotion comes images, and these are the vain imaginations that we create. And typically what we create is worst case scenario.
Yep.
Okay. So immediately you're thinking, boy, this is going to happen. That's going to happen. But what it's being driven or fueled by is fear. Yep. Fear is driving this and fueling it and keeping it alive. And so when I find out about the affair, okay, the fear that was in me, okay, and that fear was a fear of rejection. That if Audrey really knew me, she wouldn't love me. And so you can take a look at your life, and and I'm not trying to dissect and hang blame anywhere, not my mom, not my dad, not anybody else, but I have to take some personal responsibility, a good dose of that. But what I began to realize is that there are contributing components. So they can be an explanation, but they can never be an excuse. And I began to recognize that rejection was huge. And so when Audrey tells me about the affair, everything inside of my heart began to scream what it believed was true. And that was, you are unlovable and you are undesirable. And so that was just compounded. So I wanted to leave, that she would be exposed for what she did to me. And I got a hold of a godly man, and he began not to give sympathy, not to say, oh, Bob, I can't believe this happened to you. You didn't deserve this. You're such a good guy. I can't believe Audrey would do that to you, and I didn't get that. But rather what I got was truth. And when you're willing to embrace the truth of God for your life, it's there that you discover his grace. You won't find his grace, just as a sympathy, as an excuse for bad behavior. But when you find truth, then I can really begin that journey of transformation, where I find the grace of God for his promises, for his provision, for his realities to truly become mine. Grace comes where I begin to take an adjustment from my perspective, and I begin to come into an agreement with his perspective, and it's his enablement, it's his empowerment for that to become my reality. So the very first night when we're talking just over a speakerphone with a pastor friend of ours, he's challenging me with truth. And would I be willing enough to embrace that truth, that it could become my reality? And here's what he was challenging me with. He says, Bob, rather than exposing and shaming your wife, will you cover her? Proverbs 25 verse 2 says it's God's glory to conceal a matter and for a king to discover its understanding. So that evening, I'm just listening and it's just like everything inside me wanted to shame her because she's the guilty one and I'm innocent. But that's not my Father's heart. That's not the way God treats me. When was the last time, Michael, you made a mistake and God said, you know what? I've had just about enough of you. This cycle in your life just keeps going around and around. Michael,
absolutely
what I'm going
never.
to do, I'm going to shame you and expose you to everyone. You see, the Father has never done that, and he never will. That's
right.
not his nature. That's not his character.
That is, by the
So,
way, the false religion that claims to be of God, and I hear so much of that spirit of religion in churches. And again, I'm not beating up. There's great, healthy churches. God bless them all.
right.
But there's a lot of them that believe there's this angry God ready to smash our heads, and it's just not it, And the thing
Yeah,
is-
but here's the thing. I was an angry husband,
mm-hmm.
and I'm the innocent one. She's the one that had the affair.
Right,
Do you see that? See, I don't know of anyone who is more right than God himself.
Yep.
But he didn't come to this world to condemn this world, but that the world through him might be saved.
That's right.
You see,
That's right.
so he himself modeled this. And so I'm being challenged with the grace of God and the character of God. Bob, would you be the man of God? Would you be the husband that your wife needs? Rather than exposing her, would you begin to cover her? Now, on the inside, I wasn't excited about this, but what I chose to do was obey.
Mm-hmm.
What I chose to do what was right. I may not have felt that way, but sometimes you just simply need to do the right thing. So that night, I just began to say, okay, you know something I don't know. I'm going to trust you. I'm crazy right now. But before we hung up the phone, I asked him one other question. I said, before we go, I need to know. Do I get a hotel? Do I sleep on the couch? What happens tonight?
Right.
And he said, Bob, you and Audrey will not spend one night apart from each other because we will not participate with a spirit of divorce.
Love it.
And that was hard because I wanted to punish her.
Sure.
This is, my fear wanted to continue our destructive cycle of punishment and put her on a performance wheel of performance.
In my fear, because we're talking about fear, I would perform. So, and it's really, fear always controls. So we're all controlling in our own way. I'm just performing in order to get what I want, but it's still controlling. I've got to control this situation so that you're going to forgive me and love me again.
So that night, we slept in the same bed together, but definitely I was not that friendly or warm, and we didn't cuddle. But what shocked me as I stared out into what I describe as the darkest night of my life, not only was every hope and dream of our future erased, but every happy memory of 17 years was gone. And that's when I began to hear the fear screaming in my heart. She's never loved you. She'll never be faithful to you. Every lie that I had believed, every limiting belief that I had was just screaming at the top of its lungs inside of me. And I thought our life, or the possibilities of life and happiness and joy, they were gone. And at best, we could do what's right, continue to make good choices and perform, and we could be okay, just enough for our kids, just enough for our family. Keep that image going. But did I really think we would ever be happy again? Not really. I thought I needed to be a hero. I thought I needed to do a real righteous thing and keep our family together.
I don't want to take you off your rhythm here because it's so beautiful listening to this, but I want to tell you a couple of things that are resonating for me. One is that, we throw these Christian cliches out. The truth shall set you free, but the truth is the only vehicle to healing, right? And until you're willing to look truth straight in the eye and go, really, is that what I need to look at? And here's the second takeaway that I got, and that is that anything that's undealt with within my soul, my heart, my mind, my emotions, when a crisis hits me, poof, it just shows up. And when I'm, you squeeze an orange, I say this on stage a lot, what comes out is orange juice. What comes out of us when life squeezes us is the undealt with, wounds from our childhood, wounds from our past. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of whatever has been
Yes.
controlling my life at a level I never even dreamed possible. Is that kind of what's happening here?
That's so good, Michael,
Yeah.
because it's true. And what's really coming out as well is that fear has caused pain. So it's really squeezing out tons of buried pain that's been there dormant, like your word, the whole time. But this crisis brought everything right to the surface, which just in logic, it's an opportunity then. Like, it's now at the surface. So now what are we going to do? Because now is the opportunity to invite Jesus into this place.
Yeah. And again, it's not a place to be able to point blame. Okay.
Right. 'Cause
And
else we won't
to
get healed.
answer, oh, it's because of this.
In fact, that'll prevent us from dealing with
Right,
that buried pain.
right.
If you truly are in a situation where the buried pain is coming up, this is a time where you literally don't blame and you say, okay, Lord, this is what it is.
So what's happening is that this is where God comes to us. And again, he's extremely close, but what he's saying is, let me love you in this desperate place of brokenness and need. Let me more accurately love you. Let me demonstrate who I really am. And because those are things that you can kind of know about, you can give mental assent to, but is it your experience?
Experience. Phew, that's the word.
And so in my life, I had other experiences that I believed were more powerful to define who I am and how I would respond to a situation. So if I'm going to truly experience God's realities as mine, fear and love cannot coexist in the same place simultaneously.
That's right.
So it's his perfect love that expels all my fears.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
We have the facts of life. The facts of life are unchangeable. They happen. We participated. It was said. I did. It doesn't change. The only thing that will supersede the facts of my life is his truth and his perspective. And so my perspective in my woundedness and my brokenness is always judgment being fueled by fear.
Yeah.
Okay, where I prop myself up. But God doesn't do that. To reconcile, 2 Corinthians 5 says, God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself, no longer counting people's sins against them. Let me give you two components to reconcile. One is to take that which is incompatible and to make it compatible. I was incompatible with a holy God. But he says, I'll come to you in your brokenness, in your sin and shame, and I'll be there with you, and I will give you my righteousness. I'll take you and I'll make you compatible with me. The second one is simply that, to be able to involve yourself with the consequences of another person's choices and to make a way out. So God comes to me in my brokenness and he says, I'll make a way out for you. So as a husband, would I be willing to enter into not just Audrey's pain, but even our pain? And rather than being a judge and being righteous in myself, would I be willing to involve myself in these consequences? And rather than saying and shaming and holding her there, rather saying, I'll come there in your pain and I will make a way out for us.
I want to, and I know there's another real heavy part of the story that hasn't come out yet. And I want that to happen just naturally. Yeah. But here's the hope I want the audience to grab a hold of is that, if you hadn't allowed God to come into the secret places, if you hadn't allowed this process to take place, we would be playing plastic Jesus because you guys are real today. You guys are happily, incredibly, insatiably in love. Almost, I dare say, even more so because you worked through all this stuff.
Right.
And yet there's even more drama to the story as if it weren't challenging enough already, right? And here's the hope I want people to get is that you go to these events or you read a book or you have this moment where behavioral modification attempts are persuading you a little bit, and you walk out with some hope, and then 2 months, 3 months later, it's gone because it was just a momentary kind of thing instead of a at a heart level, a soul level, a transformation took place where you are what the Bible claims we could be, a new creation in Christ Jesus.
New
With
beginning.
new values, new outlook, new experiences, new abilities to touch the world. So the story goes with another challenge, and I just wanted people to know the incredible hope at the end of this.
Yeah.
Hope is really a big deal.
Yeah. So we began to get some really good help, and Audrey and I thought that we would make it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had enough people around us and the support, and it was like, okay, we will make it. And then all of a sudden, things changed.
Well, because our pain, let's just talk about pain for a little bit. When anyone in a relationship who's gone through a crisis like this knows the pain is so excruciating, and it's so hard to meet there because your pain is so different than my pain. And how do we manage this? How do we navigate through this absolutely terrorizing, terrifying trauma where without even everything has changed in a new way, in a bad way, because I can't even be in the same room with you because I'm so scared of you.
And one of the things that really delay or prevent a healing process is when you're trying to get the other person to understand your pain.
Right. Mm-hmm. We cannot move forward until you get how painful this is. And that's totally a human reaction. It's like, how are we supposed to move forward if you don't even hear my pain or you don't understand it? There's no way for you to understand it. All these stuff. So what happened is that we were navigating through all this pain that was so awful between us. But then we found ourselves 2 weeks later, actually, found out that I had become pregnant as a result of this affair.
Right.
So we knew this baby would not look like the other children. This was going to be obvious. Our other kids were older. They were 10, 12, and 15 years old. So you can even just imagine. I'm one of those nice, pleasing, sweet, loving girls.
Jesus girl.
Love people. I'm a Jesus girl. And now, as I walk out of that doctor's office, literally my whole life flashed before my eyes. And I said, it is completely over. Mm-hmm. There is no hope of a happy ending. Everyone in the world will absolutely know the most stupid and selfish thing I did. And even my children and my generations, they will always know that I'm that grandma. For some reason, the generations really hit me that day. I was like, man, I'll even be that grandma.
Yeah. You know, Audrey, I gotta ask you this because in case you might leave it out for some reason. You told me a story. I'm not even sure I heard it from you speaking. I think it was one-on-one, but I can't remember. And if I recall correctly, you were in a car at a shopping center or something, and somehow your dad,
that's what happened. Your
dad said something, and I just want to tell you this. You need to know this. Something very painful happened to me very recently, and I remembered the conversation from your.
That makes me so amazed. Thank you, Jesus, that I could be part of that journey of yours.
Still painful, but I just want you to know that your father impacted my life all these years later in a place called Las Vegas. So go ahead and share that part of your story. You're not supposed to make me cry. I'm the host.
Yeah. Well, what happened was that I didn't think I could face my life because I thought I was disqualified. I thought there was nothing. I literally could hardly live. And before even that moment, I remember I was in my kitchen and I called the abortion clinic and I said, in secret, no one else was in the room, and I said, what would it take? And they said, oh, it's so easy. Just we'll take these 10, we'll send you anonymously 10 pills and just take those pills and your problem will be gone. And so I remember falling to my knees that day and I was saying, Daddy in heaven, I said, I know I can't have this abortion, but please, I cry at this part of the story because I begged God. It's probably the only time in my life that I've literally begged him on my knees and just in horror said, please, please, God, if you love me, if you truly love me, take this baby to heaven. Please, I'm begging you. I'm begging you for a miscarriage, just so I don't have to deal with this. I don't have what it takes. I don't have the strength. I don't want my kids to go through this. And I cry because we really do in those moments think we have the way out, don't we? We think we have the best idea, the best plan,
The
to
eyes,
fix it.
the lies of the enemy are rather persuasive in a very
And just the
stressful
eyes,
place.
even the ways of escape. Like, I just want it out. Like, God, this is probably the best way we could escape out of this, is just take this baby to heaven. But because God loves me so much, he did not answer that prayer, because I essentially wanted to be evacuated out of my problem.
Right.
But God doesn't work like that. He says, we can't avoid the process, honey, but I am going to come right to where you are, and I'm going to hold you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to sleep beside you. Like every I was so scared every moment of every day and every night. Like, he was with me. He never left my side, as we walked through the valley of the shadow of death, where every one of my worst fears came upon me, and the baby would start to grow. But it was a couple days later, after that abortion phone call, that I was in that parking lot that you're talking about, Michael. And I'm alone with my dad, and my dad's a very merciful person, and he was not holding my sin against me. And he was just letting me cry. And I was crying. I said, Dad, I can't do this. I literally had nothing left in me that could face the reality of this new normal. I said, Dad, there's a baby. I can't do it. And he put his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, Audrey, that's what you did, but that is not who you are. Those words came as a blanket to me, as a covering, as a hope. It gave me the lifeline to say, you know what? And he said, other people will judge you by the most stupid stuff you've done. Other people will gather evidence of all this other stuff. But I'm your dad. I'm your Father in heaven. And I will never, ever judge you by your worst mistakes and by your failures and by your shortcomings and all this stuff you should have done different. I don't see you. When I look at you, I see my daughter. I see my child. I don't look at you and say what's wrong with you. I look at you and see what's right with you. And I see my design and my dream for you. And you know what? That's all I need. I don't care all of a sudden what other people think is so secondary or so minimized, because my heart was healed in that moment, even though I had a lot to go through. I had a pregnancy to go through.
He essentially shared the heart of the Father.
Yeah.
He was that voice of God's true nature for us. That's so beautiful.
Right.
Now you walk this out for 9 months, and this little boy that I've met and is amazing has a very unique name. What is it?
Yes.
Yeah, his name is Robert, which is my name. And I named him Robert because I didn't want him to ever question a day in his life whose boy he is. He's my son, and he belongs. His middle name is Theodore, which is divine gift. And again, he's not an accident. He's not a mistake. He's not the result of a sexual affair. But, just like my other children, born out of the heart of God and entrusted to us, we're a family. And he belongs.
I know there's technical ways to do this, but I'm just going to do this anyway.
Oh.
I just happen to see this on my desk right now. It's not the newest picture, but there's there's our kid. I keep doing it backwards. There's Robert right there.
I love it. I love it. He's like 16 now?
He's turning 18.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
And so now you kind of, because I really want to get into some other things too, but I needed your story to come out. So post this whole experience, what does God not only heal within you guys, but how does he start using you around the world to give hope, literally to millions? I mean, focus on the family alone, just millions. And millions of people around the world hope because of what God's done in your lives. Tell us about that. Let me understand that.
Sure. Well, we had no intention of ever really sharing this story. We had no desire to get back into ministry again. I mean, we were done.
Right.
And again, we just felt as though if we can stay together, if we can care for our children, everything will be okay. So after the crisis, it was about 2 years later before we find ourselves right back into ministry again, basically doing everything that we had done. For 2 years, we had completely removed ourselves. We got the help that we needed. But Michael, what really happened is that we were right back into that very same cycle. And
The
we
fear
really
cycle.
didn't
wow.
know it. We
Wow.
really didn't recognize
First
it.
we were surviving, and then we got back into our fear cycle, like we call it, because fear controls.
Yeah.
And I just continued to perform, and he continued to punish. And
So, and we're doing what we believe is right.
we're trying
and so,
hard.
You hear that phrase, and you've used it on this broadcast, and that is behavior modification. Well, it works only as long as you use it.
The system, strong will.
You keep
trying hard.
Yeah, you keep strong will and you keep determination behind it, and it can help.
Tell the Band-Aids off. It's just temporary.
Right. But it becomes exhausting, and you're afraid that, I want people to hear that word. You're afraid of it happening again. So you're creating all kinds of barriers. You're allowing really your heart to remain hard, towards one another. There is no safety. There is no authenticity of love expressed between each other, simply because you're still in this place of woundedness, but you're doing what you perceive, would be right.
Right. And so what we basically did was we got, again, to that desperate place and said, no. We said, you know what? We're going to uncover do you remember that? I remember a conversation in the car where we said, we're going to uncover every stone that got us there. And we are going to look at every aspect of our lives for those 18 years that before. And we're going to look at every way that God uses us to heal us. And we started being so intentional. We found heart physics. And we started dealing with the heart issues of our life.
What we realized is that the life that we had lived for 17, 18 years brought us to where we are. Therefore, it was insufficient to take us to where we needed to be.
I want to cut you off, but I want to be able to say, and Jim coached me on, he said, they're just used to interviewing, so it's going to be a whole different dynamic. But here's the thing I want people to understand. There is a moment in people's lives where they're so filled with pain, they're just ready to take some action, or they're so filled with pain, they're going to self-destruct some more because they need to anesthetize themselves. So it could be alcohol, drugs, could be an affair, could be whatever, because the pain is real. And I love the distinction that as you recognized these wounds from the past resurfacing, you said, no, I'm going to face these with truth.
And I think that's, and what the result of that was, because I know we're at the close of this, but I just kind of want to get big picture here.
If you guys got to go, we don't do timing here, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, if you could just think big picture, what happens is when you say no to that. I just don't know how much time today, because honestly, we could talk about how we really got.
Well, let me tell you about this art form, because I've literally been researching it and studying it ever since this whole opportunity arose. It is a blank canvas, and if you cookie cutter it into a specific time, things don't unfold naturally. And there's just this. I used to manage artists for a living. It's a blank canvas, and the way to paint it correctly is to let it just go. So we're not going to sit here for 2 days, of course, but I just don't want that to be bound. Of course, if you guys got restrictions and some hard stops, we will abide by that.
That's so gracious of you.
Yeah.
Because basically, if you don't tell the story of heart stuff, it just seems like theory, and it just feels like it just feels like words, and it's not words. Words will never help anybody. It's communicating heart language. And so
now you're facing it. Game's on. You're going to go undercover.
Well, but you don't know you are.
Yeah, and as well, you're always you oftentimes, especially when it's a relational crisis or a relational betrayal, you're looking for that other person because they're the ones that introduced the pain. And because of that, then you're hoping that other person will get fixed. And if that other person can get fixed and get better, then they'll, bring that safety, into the relationship.
Because I never really...
So Audrey and I, we were both, trying to be better with each other and trying to project. So is this how you want me to be? Is this how we should react? I'm trying to suppress and I'm trying to manage my anger. I'm trying to, deal with the images and the thoughts that are going on in my mind. But what we realized is that, here we were 2 years later, and what we needed to do is that I needed to get whole, healthy, and well myself. And it cannot be contingent upon what she does.
That's right. That's right.
And again, this is where personal responsibility steps in.
It's big.
And all of a sudden, I'm beginning to realize, and which I had for a long, long time, that I have the issues. I'm the angry one. I'm the resentful one. I'm the one that's, holding this unforgiveness. And me just managing this is causing me to be exhausted and tired and sick. And what we realize is that in our relationship, there is no peace. There is no peace.
We weren't fighting. Fighting. The fighting had stopped by the time 2 years. There was no fighting because I made sure, because I hate fighting, so I made sure I wasn't honest enough to make there be a fight. So there's a lot I just said in 2 seconds for anyone who knows what that's like. But anyway, what I did do is I got very desperate again. Remember what started this whole thing, Michael, is when I talked about desperation. I think you probably remember that.
Yep.
Well, guess what? 2 years after Robert's born, we're back in ministry, and I'm literally feeling the same desperation. And I'm feeling like I'm just working so hard, and I'm trying so hard. And whatever I do, no matter how much I try and be perfect for Bob and do things just the way he likes it, so that I just need him to love me and to be happy again. And I try so hard every day, and I finally come to the end. One day I just knew that one day, I had heard the expression that one day in God's presence can change you forever, or one moment in God's presence can you can be changed forever. So I actually planned. I actually planned a God moment for him. I prayed by the front door, just hoping that I prayed for 3 hours, singing and praying and bringing down God's presence, so that when Bob would walk in the door, he would just go, "Whoa, what is going on? I'm so free. And how come I love you so much now? How come I'm
Wouldn't
so
it be great?
nice now? I'm so sweet, and I'm so nice, and I'm going to be safe for you, and we're going to laugh again." Well, that didn't happen.
Right, because what you're praying for is magic.
Yeah, that's not
and
God.
Magic is simply avoiding the process.
I want to tie this into I just want people to understand before we depart, I want people to know where your ministry is, how to get a hold of you guys, because there's going to be millions of people listening to this podcast. These guys at Christian.com are just extraordinary group of entrepreneurs. And I think about living in Las Vegas and speaking to men's groups about Lost and part of my journey and all the things I've been through. And there's too much of what I'm going to try to give a picture of and tie it into you guys. Driving down the road here, there are stripper billboards like every 4 feet.
Right.
And there is a process that you can go as a Christian going, I'm not supposed to look at that. And so there's a beautiful book written on it, Every Man's Battle. I'm going to just bounce within a couple of seconds. And if I do that long enough, I'm going to change the brain chemistry. And you guys, I think now are both PhDs, so you probably know more about this than I do. And then I'm going to be rewired and everything's going to be okay. But let me tell you what happens with heart transformation. You drive by those billboards and you go, oh, that's somebody's daughter. Because your heart is an alignment with the Holy Spirit and who God is. And it's not even something I need to bounce from. It's something that hurts me, right? And learning that process of real transformation is what's changed my life, right? So
because you're creating that movie with it. I remember one time when I was in another country where there was a lot of naked people on billboards and stuff like that. And I remember I was just kind of like troubled by it. Well, I was intrigued by it at first. And then I went, oh, you have to kind of get yourself just being real.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then I actually pictured myself, because of just doing heart work. I've literally taken a blanket and covered whenever I'd see a naked person in my heart, I'd cover them. They are so covered. Just cover them, Jesus, with who you say they are. And I just imagined every one of those people getting just covered with a blanket, and it was just, I was covering nakedness all through the country of Brazil. I will never forget it. I was like, wow.
I love that story. And here's the cool part. You guys facilitate that now for people all over the world.
Yeah.
Through seminars, workshops, places you speak, some materials on your website.
I counted the other day. We actually We actually have we've spoken many times at some of these cities, but over 120 cities in the last 15 years,
Wow.
over 6 continents and 15 countries. And what
Mm.
happens is the story of Robert is an inspiring one. But what we are even more excited about than our story is the strategies and all of the things that we have developed to help other couples.
Right.
So we took all the things that helped us get past those painful years and we continue to walk in, but we say we believe that every relationship can be so safe that
Mm.
becomes your home, becomes the haven where that is the most safest place in the entire world, is when you're with your family, when you're
Oh,
with your husband, when you're with your wife. That's where you just sit back and breathe. Those are the relationships that were designed by God to be the ones where you laugh so easy and you dream without anybody judging your dreams, and where you can just move forward and get the encouragement that goes deep into your heart. But that happens as you do what we call the heart work.
mm.
And probably the most effective thing we do is have a 3-day intensive where a couple comes into our home
Tell
and
us
we
about
just
that.
get
Tell us about that.
well, a couple comes to our home and we just work through every cycle that got them to
Mm.
where they are,
Mm.
why they fight, how they fight, what's the fear behind that fight, what is the song that God gave them specifically to sing on this earth that matches with the other person's song, so that you can learn to sing in harmony and let that song be orchestrated by the Holy Spirit rather than clashing with
Mm.
each other and being mad at each other's song. How can we learn to be so different and yet so like oneness is not sameness. Oneness is beautiful harmony of two extremely different people
You know,
living together and loving together.
I don't even know where to tie this thing because there's so many neat things I want to share with you guys. One of them is that in helping, my real business is consulting around the world, CEOs all over the place, business owners, and helping them realize what they're truly capable of growing an organization into. And a lot of it has to do with working with people. And I hesitate to use this reference because I don't know how Christian is, but we mostly trip over the same midgets in life. And what happens is I see these patterns. I see these reoccurring patterns in organizations. And one of the top things I have to do is shift the collective belief systems of the leadership team. So my question to you in the setup is, do you see similarities that you'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind and stupid not to realize are in almost every troubled marriage? Are there landmines that are so consistent you go, because I've learned the story is never the story.
Yeah, exactly. And we can learn to interrupt those things, but actually learn entire new heart patterns based on how secure you are. So, we've got e-course. And the other thing we found out is that newlyweds and pre-married people really need heart stuff.
Oh.
So we actually developed an e-course called the Newlywed Course.
Where do people find you, by the way? Where do they find you?
BobandAudrey.com.
BobandAudrey.com. That is a place you want to go. Love it.
And so there's a newlywed course and there's also a marriage 911 course. Mm-hmm. Those were the two that we just knew were really important. Like, let's help people with the foundations of their marriage to start out in a way that they're super prepared and they can have this course by themselves at their own phone or their own computer with workbooks of what to get through as far as discussion with each other and stuff like that. And then also
we just popped it up on the screen. Isn't that right?
Oh, yeah, there we go. Good. That's our big marriage course there. That's 32 classes. And there's my devotional Wake Up Smile. Well, you'll just see all kinds of stuff that we're doing now.
So let me ask you a question relative to the ministry. What makes it, and I'm going to put you on a little deal here. What makes it not just information, but I walk out different. I'm more engaged. I experience God at the level He wants me to experience. What makes that happen there?
Well, I think we had a couple just this morning where we're traveling. We leave tomorrow and we're doing a weekend marriage getaway. And we had a couple that have just canceled last minute. And it's really kind of sad. But the husband has just said, I don't want it. I don't want to do this. And the F word in our family is force. You can't force or make anyone do anything.
Yeah, amen.
And so there has to be a willingness of heart. And so then rather than just giving them a list of don't do this and do this, but if there's a willingness of heart, then I can introduce them and they can begin to develop a healthy, right relationship, not just with each other, But when the truth of their identity, their dignity, their value and worth is in place, and that's, what I was kind of leading into a few minutes back, I had to get healthy myself.
That's right.
And it's not dependent on what she does. And so a relationship naturally changes simply because I'm willing to change. And I think too often you're projecting it on the other person. And when are you going to change? When are you going to get better? When are you going to start? And it's just like, no, I'm going to embrace and I'm going to know the love of God. And I'm going to be whole and I'm going to be healthy and well myself.
And I think that when you asked the question, you actually had the answer within the question. Besson, I called you Besson.
You go for it, girl. Call me anything you want.
Yeah. But what you did is you said, how does a couple lead different? It's because the word experience, because they haven't just changed and gotten some great ideas. They've experienced Jesus in a place where they were the most scared. And when Jesus can reach you at that place and where that cross path came, where pain entered in, if you can get to that trespass and you can close your eyes and experience the love, acceptance of Jesus, and you can create a new movie in your mind of Jesus, that memory, all of a sudden him holding you just makes your heart get healed. And so when Jesus said, I came to heal your broken heart and set you free, that's literally what happens in everything that we do when it comes to marriage ministry. It has to be based in getting free from the prisons of fear, taking off the cloaks of shame, and then putting on the covering of God. And it has to do with moving forward and experiencing his healed heart.
I just know so many Christian marriages struggling, looking pretty on the outside, but I know too much about the inside and not having this experiential thing happen.
Right.
And by the way, just to refresh your memories, I think we met 8 or 9 years ago, and I was going through a health crisis. Mercury poisoning, didn't know it at the time, and there was a marriage abandonment. I don't want to talk negative. She's a beautiful soul and loves God, and I'm very happy for her life now. We share a beautiful daughter. The reality is, Bob spoke to it. There's free will involved. And I remember just doing everything I could. I mean, I fasted for 40 days and lost 45 pounds. I was just seeking God in desperation and crying and begging and pleading. And then one day I just went, you can't mess with free will.
No, you can't.
So what did I contribute to this? And I made a list of, I wanted to fix the love thing. I didn't want the actors and the characters to change and then the same movie played out, right? And I looked and I said, these are the things that I want. And they weren't superficial, man. They were depth. What does this person need to think about the Lord and where they're at with God? If they're ahead of me or behind me, how do we deal with that? And what's their integrity need to be like? And I just drew out this map and I began to meditate on it. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me so loud and clear, Bob. It's just like what he said to you. Hey, Michael, you want to attract that? Become that. Work on your healing. Work on your stuff with me. Let me come in and not work on the flesh, but let me heal you, Yeah. And as I played out these last 7.5 years of single Christian life, which is a whole episode in and of itself, I began to see an escalation of the quality of potential people that I might spend the rest of my life with, right? And interestingly enough, I'm in a real serious relationship with somebody for 2 years who is a widow who knew how to walk out wholeness. Both her and her husband were Christians, and he died in her arms, unfortunately, of a heart attack. And the thing that I discovered in the dating world, and this is to every couple that's thinking about getting a divorce, if you don't heal the inner damage that's been going on in your life for a long time, probably led to your divorce, and you start dating somebody, you bring that same set of ugly luggage with you. And then you start thinking, well, this guy's not any good at all either. And it's really a condition of you. And so as I began to heal, I began to see higher and higher qualities of females showing up and suddenly going, oh my gosh, I found a woman who's on the same trajectory, who is just chasing God for wholeness. and it has a glow about her.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
went, wow,
Beautiful.
this would have never happened had I not done what Bob said.
Exactly.
Worked on my own healing.
Exactly.
Would have
How
never
happy
happened.
we are for you, Michael. How happy we are for you.
So good.
And that is exactly it.
Yeah, a danger, and I'll just share this with our listeners. A danger is when you begin to look for an individual to be the one that would bring the healing. They're the ones that will fill the gap. They're the ones that will bring what's lacking in my life. Well, if you do that, you will be a user in that relationship.
You're using them as your
source.
You're
using them as your source. Only God can truly be your source. So the question is, are you the one you're looking for is looking for?
And are you the one? And are you the one that knows your source so that you won't ever? We have, you know what? We do have a great relationship, but guess what? Bob is not my source for anything.
That's
not
right.
for friendship, not for provision, not for. He literally does not have. He's not God. He can never be my source. He can be my number one contributor.
Can't be each other's
but
source.
Never would he be my source. And the minute I switch over and think he's my source, immediately I'll get disappointed. He's just a guy.
Tell me if I'm right about this. So
you're a great guy.
He is, and you both are just. You never left my heart. It's such a blessing to see you again, and we will tie this up pretty soon here. But I want to tell you a story. 3 or 4 days ago, I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook page, but we have these amazing, beautiful people in our life. And they throw this annual Valentine's event at their home, and there's this breathtaking home and scenery and all that stuff. And every couple there is really great, good, moral people. Maybe half of them believers, half of them not, but really good people, married a long, long time. So there's 3 contests. 3 contests for the trophy for first place love story, right? And the contest were 10 questions that I know about you, you might know about me. We get on opposite sides of the room. And we won first place. And here's the
Are you serious?
Here's the scary part.
It.
Here's the scary part. The first category is you write a Valentine's card, you get in front of the microphone and you read it to this whole audience. So there's like 50 of us or so. Yeah, cool. And I took one that was completely in the envelope. And I said, our entire relationship is founded on integrity and truth. Yeah. And the truth is, I just bought this on the way here. I haven't even opened it up and read and wrote the special stuff that I'm supposed to read. But the stuff I want to share with you is from my heart, and it's not from Hallmark. And I began to just tell how sacred it was falling in love with a widow and to allow God to do the work that he's been doing in our lives. And I just poured it out and everybody started crying. So I won that category. And then we went to the next one.
Nailed it.
And this isn't about me. I'm going to get to a point, I swear. Then I got to the next one, and it was about what you know about each other. We killed it. I mean, 0 to 10, how does your man barbecue? 10, I'm a rock star, right? And it was just these categories, right? And I was watching everybody because the scores kept out in front of everybody. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think we're going to win this thing. And then the last category was, again, more stuff about what you know about the other person. And here's what we walked away with besides the trophy. Oh my goodness, these are beautiful souls, but I think they're getting complacent.
Yeah.
Because we wake up, because after 2 years, it's not new anymore, right? And when every day we wake up, we live in 2 separate houses, we're doing it God's way, and we literally say to ourselves with intention, we're going to create an extraordinary love story with God in the center of it. And people are going to ask us, what the heck do you guys have? That is an intention of our souls.
That's
because,
great.
Because I think our marriages are supposed to reflect who God really is.
That's right.
And if we let it go complacent even at 2 years, it's game over, man. And I don't want ordinary love. There's too many things mediocre in life, right? Let's make love extraordinary. So
let's do that. Let's make it phenomenal. Yeah. Congratulations on that, though. Seriously, on your trophy, but also on your girl. I think that's awesome that you have such a beautiful girl.
So I want people to realize they can go to bobandaudrey.com and they can engage with you at a lot of different levels. So let's
different levels.
Let's talk. People that are in leadership roles can invite you to their church. Is it just like? Do I understand correctly? There's 2 venues. One is you could come and you could put on an event at their church. And you could just be a guest speaker in the middle of a sermon. help us understand that, because there's going to be leaders that we engage with at a massive level here, and I want them to hear that story.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. What we do is we want to help facilitate the local church. Community, creating family, relationships are really, really valuable. So what the local church is doing, we can step in and really supplement, what they are doing, or even help them even pioneer or start something new with regards to having healthy, right relationships within the church, just to kind of prioritize it a bit. So whether that would be a Friday night, Saturday seminar, or Sunday services, however we could best serve them, that's simply, what we want to do.
Most weekends we come in on a Friday night. We do Friday night and like 9 to 1 on a Saturday. But we just came back yesterday from Montreal in Canada, and it was so over the top. We're getting emails constantly that you've changed our life.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I'm like, it's not we didn't change our life, but in one weekend, the Holy Spirit has changed your life.
Yeah.
And a lot of them we've heard is, this isn't like any other marriage event we've ever been to, because
Right.
we're not leaving here feeling like we're not good enough. We're leaving here feeling empowered and healed and ready. And you had us do things together on the spot that made us face things instead of trying to go home and face things.
Love that.
So we do a lot in one weekend. We get a lot covered
Yes.
in one weekend.
And then there are those who would prefer a private session.
Mhm.
And we would invite them into our home, and we would, be with them, and depending on how much time they want to invest, but it would either be 1, 2, or 3 days.
Mhm. Full
And
days.
they're full days. They're 8-hour days.
Mhm.
And we just begin to work that through.
We start to break cycles that have been making you crazy.
Bingo.
And
That's
why
right.
not just live in safety and joy and peace? And we actually have named our house. Our house is called the House of Mercy. So the minute you walk into our home, you're going to feel a ton of mercy. We're actually in the office where we do our intensives. I just realized that we've got some writing there behind us. Someone was the loyal good lover behind us.
I love it.
But anyway, we just map out the pain, and then we map out the healing. So it's very practical, but it's very deep.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to stick their toe in the water and just sort of get some initial resources, is there like a starting point, or do you just go to the website?
I would
What's that?
Go to the website, download our free book. That's how I would start. Is
Yeah.
download our free book, Communication Goals, because those are it's a heart communication book. What is your heart needing when you communicate? And
By the way, I don't want to brag, but one of the questions was, what is your significant other's best attribute? And ours was communication.
Oh, so nailed it.
Bam!
So yeah, download the free ebook and take it from there, and then get e-courses, because e-courses are designed to be really, really amazing. So,
I love that. I love
we
that.
got a Spanish book up there. We got ebooks. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff going
Hey,
on.
and for those that are in leadership roles that like Alphabet Soup, and I don't mean to demean that, you guys both have PhDs now in clinical psychology, or behavioral, or family?
Our doctors are in ministry, and that covers the human behavior, and it covers relationships and communication, all those things. But the overarching doctorate is in ministry.
I love it. And so congratulations, Dr.
Thank
Bob
you.
and Dr. Audrey.
Oh my gosh.
That's happened
now you have to just think I'm important.
You are. I always knew you were. All right, guys. Hey, it has been
so much,
such
Michael.
a blessing to hang out with both of you and to see
Thank
the
you.
impact you're making. And please know this isn't the last time we're all going to visit like this. We're going to be doing seminars at Christian.com. There's a whole lot of things we're going to be rolling out, and we are going to want people like you to walk alongside of us and impact the world for Christ. So any parting thoughts, the comments that you want to make?
I do.
Okay, and then I will.
Okay, the most important thing is the one who's listening is that I really believe that if anything was touched your heart, this is not whatever we've experienced. It wasn't just for us, it's for you. It's very personal. And that whatever God did for me, he can do for you.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to speak to that person who did have the abortion, or that person that did get the divorce. And no matter where your story has taken you till this day, I just want to say this to your heart, is that your Redeemer lives, and he can rewrite your story. And just I showed you a picture of our kids that I couldn't see 18 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a picture for your life that you haven't seen yet.
Yep.
And he's got a dream for you.
Right.
So I just want to speak hope.
Yeah.
That's
so
beautiful.
Don't stop dreaming.
Yeah.
Proverbs 13:12 says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. But when dreams are realized, you experience both life and joy. So today, if there's anything that you've heard that gives you that glimmer of hope, that glimmer of possibility.
Yeah.
Audrey said, we wanted to show you our family picture because 18 years ago, we couldn't see that.
Not a chance.
We did not see a happy ending.
Chance.
But God.
But God.
So if you've heard something today, I want you to dream again. And I want you to have hope, which is that joyful, confident expectation that the promises of God can truly be mine. That verse that I quoted in Proverbs, my question to you is, what are you dreaming for? What are you in anticipation for? Because you are perfectly designed by God to live with answered prayer. So please get in conversation with God. He wants the dreams of your heart to become your reality.
Yeah.
Boy, that's just a beautiful close. And at Christian.com, we believe that your best life starts here, and it's because of people like Dr. Bob and Dr. Audrey. So
thanks, Michael. Congratulations on your amazing best life.
Yeah, that's right.
God bless you.
Let it start today.
God bless you both, and thank you so much.
Good. Thank you.